So if you're ready, I will intro us
I am ready.
and we will jump in. So
All right.
welcome back to the show, everyone. It is my distinct pleasure to have a conversation that never in my life I would have thought that I would have. And so we are going to talk today about what opera singing can teach you about public speaking. And I have with me today Miss Ann Fuchs. Hi, Ann.
Hi, Anthony. How you doing?
I am so good. Thank you for being here. This is going to be fun. And I need to set the stage a little bit for how we got to this point. Ann and I met thanks to Mitch Daniels Leadership Foundation, which is a fellowship program that exists in Indiana, small cohorts every year. We are cohort number 7. And yeah, that's right. That's right. And so we initially met at the opening retreat a handful of months ago where we were giving 5-minute presentations on our Hoosier story. And so Ann was up there. She gives her story. Spoiler alert, Ann is an opera singer, and none of us knew that in the room until she got to the point in her story where she started talking about it. And of course, us being obnoxious people in the crowd, we wanted a demonstration. And so Ann blows the roof off of the executive boardroom where we were that day. Everybody applauds and claps for Ann. This was such a cool moment.
Oh.
And then our program facilitator, Kelsey, hits the next slide over, and it's time for Anthony to give his speech.
Oh.
And there is nothing that Anthony can say to make it relevant or interesting after that point. And that is my introduction to Ann. And it has been nothing but a pleasure to know her ever since. And I can't help but embarrass her just a little bit before we get into some tactical stuff, because Ann actually has some really great content about what she has learned over the course of being an opera singer in a professional setting, and how it relates to what she does in potentially her day job as a public speaker, as a presenter, as a communicator, where there are a lot of parallels taken from an industry that, frankly, I don't think anyone else in my sphere of influence or audience has any experience in, and that's opera singing. And so, Ann, jump into this. Have some fun with me. What can opera singers teach us about public speaking?
Well, I guess the first thing they can teach us is how to really make the person presenting after us feel great. What's so funny about that story is that I was so extremely nervous about putting those two parts of my world out there simultaneously that I didn't even remember that you were the next one. So I'm so sorry. I think I may have encouraged you to also sing or say a poem or something. I recall putting that out there for somebody.
Yeah, for the betterment of everybody involved, I didn't sing. It's okay. We all survived, and we're here to laugh about it now.
There's still time, Anthony. I will get to you, just like I get to everyone's voice eventually. No, I'm really excited to be here today. I've spent my life training as an opera singer. It's the greatest gift that I have. Music is the greatest gift of my life. And the journey of learning about the voice and how to use it has been a journey of the soul and a journey of the heart. Every student that I've worked with throughout my career in teaching them how to sing or in working with them on their performance kind of metrics has been such a gift, no matter where they go with that, because it's a self-discovery journey. And in my career as a public affairs professional, I'm dealing with lawyers and judges and legislators and representatives and people all the time who need to put themselves out there, myself included. And I'm constantly amazed by the skill set that opera singers have for using the voice, that I realized if you've never studied that, you just wouldn't know. And I'm constantly around people who need to use their voices to advocate and communicate and really be persuasive with that tool. But it has so many layers and levels to it that they may not understand how to actually use. So I've started developing a training program to really help people with that.
Okay, this is exciting, and you've got to give us just a little glimpse of what does this training program look like? What's the high level first place? Where do I start? What do I do? I know nothing about opera singing, but I want to get better at speaking. Tell me how they're intertwined and how it makes sense, Ann.
Sure. Yeah, it can be kind of a stretch, right? You think opera singer and you see, horns on someone's head and a breastplate and a vibrato voice, and probably not what you're thinking you want to do in your next board meeting. Totally get it. Definitely not trying to do that to anybody at all. But what I am trying to do is to get people to understand the fundamentals of using their body and their voice as an instrument. And in
Okay.
a way, learning those tools, a lot of it's about grounding yourself and your breathing, but then there's also some pretty specific musculature things that we go over in the training to help you release your authentic voice. And ultimately, it releases you of a lot of anxiety and stress in communicating, because we all have these habits, we have these things we want to hold on to, especially when we're nervous.
Yeah, it's funny. Even as you say just that, I'm noticing I am inclined to sit up a little straighter while
Right?
you're talking to me, and I'm like, "Oh gosh, I'm in some sort of voodoo world now." Keep going, Ann. This is great.
So one of the main tenets of the training, it's built on vocal awareness. So we very much look at your voice as your brand. Your
Mhm.
voice is your auditory calling card. That's how you convey to people who you are, and kind of what you want them to feel and how you feel about yourself. But how do you really do that, right? There's so many different ways to explore that. But the first step, the hardest step, is listening to yourself. And
Okay.
I'm gonna tell you a little story because, well, first let me ask you: Have you? I'm sure you've listened to yourself now for hours doing the show and doing all these recordings, right?
Yeah, well, I'll unveil the curtain for you a little
Yeah.
bit here. The reason that this YouTube channel exists in the first place is because once upon a time, I went to a plan commission meeting to propose a real estate development in Durham, North Carolina, and the presentation went so terribly that I decided that that was never going to happen to me again. And so yes, I've listened to myself, but maybe somebody in the audience, somebody watching has not recently pulled out their selfie camera, recorded 2 minutes of them blabbering, and then watched it back. Tell me more about why that's beneficial.
Sure, sure. So I'm going to guess that when you watched that video of yourself, or when you first started listening to yourself, would you say that your voice, you just heard your voice and you just loved everything you heard?
No, not
It
in the
was the
slightest.
opposite, right?
I sounded funny. My word choice was poor. I didn't sound confident. I knew that there was plenty to improve upon.
Right. And I think that's the experience most people have had. If they listen to a recording of themselves, or they see a video and they hear their voice, when they hear it, they're like, oh, who is that? Who is that person? It sounds nothing like you, right? The first thing you do as an opera singer is you learn that that voice that you hear in your head is not your real voice. There's the voice you hear in your head, and there's the voice other people hear. And you spend your life training the voice that other people hear. And that, right?
Yeah, right.
And so that's the tough thing, because what we hear inside our head it's called bone conduction. It's a distortion of sound waves that are basically bouncing around in your skull, and that's what you're hearing in your inner ear. But when you send those sound waves out of your mouth into someone else's ears, that's your voice. And so that's what we train, that's what we work on. And that person you hear on the recording, who you feel like you don't know or like, that's you. So we got to work on that. We got to make that congruent with what you want to show and who you want to be, how you see yourself. And it's all doable, all of it.
That is fun. And thank you for going into a little bit of the science of why it exists that way as well. And so the practical person is not going to professionally study opera like you have, Anne, but some of these low-hanging fruits that in the next handful of weeks and months, somebody that wants to get better at public speaking, somebody who knows that in the next coming weeks or months they have a speaking engagement where for maybe the very first time they have to stand in front of a podium in front of people, how can they start to use practical tips from your world as an opera singer to get ready for that?
Absolutely. Well, first, I would just go ahead and shamelessly plug and say, contact me if you want any help whatsoever. But I'll give away a few things for free here. The number one thing that I can tell you is to be as authentic as humanly possible. If there is one thing that we study in the arts and in theater, it's that every single human being is an excellent detector of authenticity. Think about your public figures, love them or hate them. If they're authentic, there's something about them that you can sort of trust, even if it's something you don't like.
Mhm.
And in the arts, when we're portraying a character or we're putting something out there on stage, we're always trying to find the kernel of truth in that and to deliver that with the maximum authenticity. And if there was just one piece of advice I could give somebody who's about to go up and do that thing, it's focus on the message and don't get caught up in yourself. You know, think about your audience and give them the confidence and the clarity of your own confidence. That's how you make other people feel more relaxed when they're listening to you, is
I like
projecting the confidence.
I like that. And so you're setting yourself up, projecting the confidence. People feel like they can trust you and engage with you, and then you've got a captivating platform that you can speak upon whatever your topic is. And so we go into that. You've outlined some base level. This is what we need to do to make people feel comfortable. And then we
Yeah.
get into what you're describing as the 7 secrets of opera singers. And
Oh,
again, we don't have to go into all 7 of these. We can go, as deep as you want to. You're
sure.
offering your services to people at a one-on-one level, which is an even extension of this conversation. But tell me a little bit more about what can people do that they're not thinking about because they've never been trained in opera. This is so fun.
Yeah, sure. Okay, I'll tell a little story. So, in my work, I'm a public affairs person who works for a governmental entity. I work for the Court of Appeals of Indiana, and I work with a lot of judges and a lot of lawyers, many of whom are absolutely fantastic public speakers. But I did watch a woman a few years ago argue before the Supreme Court, really fine attorney, standing on one leg, kind of
Mm-hmm.
like a flamingo. I was just blown away, right? Because the opera singer inside me is just dying. I mean, that's opera 101. You get those feet planted in the floor, you've got your stance, you make sure you're grounded, and then you deliver, right?
Yeah.
And I'm watching this woman with one leg up, and I'm thinking, how is she like not falling over, first of all? And second of all, interestingly, her arguments were just as flimsy as her posture. And so at some point, I saw the other leg drop, and her arguments were equally as solid. And that was really, really telling to me because there's the whole chicken and egg of this, right? And sometimes we don't know how we're going to feel in the moment.
Yeah.
That day that you and I met, I was so extremely nervous. I was sitting next to Katerina in the back, and
Yep.
I've told her this story afterwards. I was so nervous about the presentation that I was about to do that I was actually doing box breathing and some of my techniques to manage performance anxiety. And yeah, had to kind of go up there and just think about my basics, like getting my feet planted, getting my breath under me, and just put myself in performance mode so that I didn't lose my cool, or worse yet, go flamingo on it.
That is fun. I would have never known that you were even had any apprehensions at all that day. You delivered wonderfully, and it's funny because I feel like even if you've got a lot of experience public speaking, I mean I'm on, I think, video number 500 or 600 by now. But I will
Mhm.
tell you that presenting among those 24 people who I knew in my head were impressive individuals, that unleashed a panic in me because I
Oh,
thought I thought to myself, these are impressive folks. I better be impressive too, even though I'm just an average guy. And so I can
oh,
totally empathize with the types of things you're talking about here.
well, I felt the exact same way. So I can tell you, you are not just an average guy. I thought every single person in that room was so intimidatingly impressive. And I think the best part of all is that the more I get to know everybody, the more impressive I find them.
Yes.
It's just an incredible group. We're
And
so fortunate to have it.
yeah, and so I'll stop right here with something I probably should have done 15 minutes ago. This is a shameless plug for MDLF. That's the Mitch Daniels Leadership Foundation Fellowship. If you are watching this the day that it comes out, you have 2 more days to submit your application for Fellowship Class 8. Highly recommend that you do it. It's been a wonderful experience. And so now back to our regularly scheduled podcast. And you talked about box breathing. I'm curious what that is. I have no idea.
So box breathing is something that singers and paramedics and all kinds of people in high stress situations do to manage their nerves. And so basically you're breathing kind of in a box shape. So you're going to breathe in for 4 seconds slowly, hold it for 4, let it out slowly for 4, wait 4 more seconds. And by repeating that, you want to try it?
Yeah, sure.
We breathe in for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Out. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4.
I really hope our video syncs well enough that that doesn't look really funny. So we'll find out soon.
Yeah, maybe we'll cut that if it doesn't work. But yeah, it's a wonderful technique. That's what I was literally doing in the back by Katarina, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't remember the last time I was this nervous about singing in front of people. Whew, got to get my breath under me. And I think the holding is really critical there,
Okay.
because it forces you to just have to not hyperventilate and focus on something and keep your mind kind of under control, get your body under you, keep your larynx low, all this nerdy stuff that we singers know. Do you know about the larynx? It's right here.
Sure.
It's in there.
Remember back to health class in high school, you bet.
Yeah. Did you ever learn about vocal folds?
I don't think so.
Vocal folds. So when people talk about the voice box, so really they're kind of talking about the laryngeal area, and inside there you've got these two kind of fibers, muscle fibers, that basically like go against each other like this, and those are your vocal folds, and they basically undulate when air passes through them. So I'm holding them up and down, but really they're like this way, horizontally inside of you. And so as air passes through them, they just gently vibrate. And when you see a picture of this, it's really something to see. it's got a look to it. I'm not going to throw it up on a screen, but it helps you understand how small they are and how fragile. And when you kind of constrict that tiny space, you're really making it difficult for yourself, and your body panics.
Sure.
And kind of shuts down. That physical awareness of moving the breath through is really, really valuable for people in learning how to moderate their voice.
Got it. So we've talked about breath work. We've talked about showing up as our authentic self. We've talked about getting our feet and our body into a position to deliver that message. When we combine all of those things together, what happens when you still have these thoughts to yourself? I'm an introvert. This isn't me. Thoughts of doubt. Is there anything that we can get into from that sort of world? Because it's easy to say all of these things, and it's much more difficult to go into the next room where the audience is waiting for you and actually make sure that you deliver upon it.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's one of the biggest points that I have with this, that I really am passionate about. There's lots of actors and presenters and theatrical people out there who will go and who will do trainings and who will encourage you to be this larger than life version of yourself that you just might not be. That's okay. You don't have to be some enormous version of yourself that doesn't feel right. That's the last thing that I would want of anybody. The goal of this kind of training is to understand your unique instrument, your unique vocal and auditory brand, and frankly, the way that you want to make other people feel when you're talking to them. I think that helps a lot with the introversion. And especially with anxiety, it can feel like you're overly critical of yourself. But when you start to view your voice as a gift that you give to other people, and I know a lot of people are like, oh God, my voice isn't a gift to anybody, right? But it's not true, because no matter what you might think of your voice, the emotion or the feeling that you can give to another person through the tone that you use, through the way that you convey the breath, through the way that you choose your phrasing, all things that I like to work on with people, that's a gift you give to others. And by focusing on making your audience comfortable, making your audience feel happy, it kind of relieves that introversion and anxiety for yourself.
Yeah, this is mind-blowing for me in the sense that this is probably the first time in my life that I've really been thinking about how I am delivering and not necessarily what I'm saying. And
it's hard, right?
Yeah, and so this is an opportunity for growth for me, no doubt about it. But I really wanted to bring you on and record this episode. Number one, because you're an exceptional human being. I want to share you with the world, if I can, a little bit here.
The
But
feeling is mutual.
well, thank you. But number two, this is the type of stuff that I had to take a college speech class. This was not covered whatsoever, and nothing against the folks that taught that class, but this is stuff that you're not going to get anywhere else. And so I wanted to make sure that in my little corner of the internet, this exists for somebody to watch, potentially get some benefit from it, and have the opportunity to take lessons from an opera singer and bring them into their public speaking. And so, Anne, are we missing any key last thoughts? Anything that you want to make sure that we share that we haven't talked about yet?
I mean, beyond like a clip of you singing for us, I think that's going to be our goal, right? We're going to have to we should make a challenge where I challenge you, Anthony. I challenge you to take a lesson with me, and let's do another recording sometime and see how you feel. And if you never want to share it, that's fine. But what do you say? Can I challenge you to one lesson with me?
I am so glad I've got editabilities to this video right now. I'm going to leave it in, but I am so glad I've got editabilities to this video right now. I will tell you the extent of my singing. Once upon a time, I laid my daughter Marin down to bed, and it was my turn, and my wife usually does the singing, sing me songs before bed. Well, Ashley was out one night, and so I had to do the singing. And so I got through the second twinkle of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star before she interrupted me and told me to pick a different song. That's the baseline that you would be working with.
Wow. You only got to the second twinkle?
2 twinkles. That's as far as we got.
2 twinkles too many. Oh,
no. This is so fun. And would it be okay if in the show notes I link to your website if people want to get in touch with you and potentially look at what it might be like to explore this further on a one-on-one level?
I would love that. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to share this with you. Thank you for welcoming me to your corner of the internet. And anyone who's a friend of yours is a friend of mine because you're such a delightful person. I'm so glad that we met through the fellowship, truly.
Outstanding, Anne. Thank you. And the same goes for you. And so that's going to wrap up this episode of the show. Hopefully you've made it to this point. You can enjoy the laughs that we've made along the way and take some benefit from the fact that an opera singer can teach you how to be a better public speaker. Till next time, friends, take care.
Thank you.